Well, welcome back. Good to be with everyone again. Good to have Matt by my side. Matt, how are you today?
I am fantastic. How about yourself?
Doing well, thanks. Matt and I are going to talk a little bit today about momentum and how momentum plays such a huge role, not just in sales cycles, but in our lives. And then what drives how do we find that momentum? Where do we reach deep for it? And why does it seem like so many people either always have momentum? And why is it so many people in our lives always seem to be struggling and be behind the eight ball or, pushing that proverbial rock uphill?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think part of that has to do with motivation and motivation, not just overall motivation, but our outlook, right? What motivates us, and when we evaluate salespeople, we find there's three types of motivation. There's intrinsic, extrinsic, and balanced, right? Somebody can be a balanced between the two. Intrinsic motivation is actually where people are motivated more by just doing the right thing, their inner drive that forces them to always want to accomplish, want to achieve, not so much based on what's out there for them, but just because it's the right thing to do. Then there's those that are extrinsically motivated. That's usually thought of as money motivated. It could also be recognition or reward motivated. And then there's balanced. And what we find, there was a study done a few years back with high-performing salespeople inside of high-performing sales organizations. And they found that 14% of the people, the high performers, were balanced, right? Only 12% of them were extrinsically motivated.
Mm-hmm.
76% of high-performing salespeople inside of high-performing sales organizations were intrinsically motivated, meaning they just found that intestinal fortitude inside themselves to do great things no matter their surroundings.
And how often do people talk about compensation? How do we motivate? How do we light a fire? How do we end the quarter or the year strong? The first thing people do as owners and as leaders are think about what money they can throw out at it. But that's a topic for another day.
Well, let's actually attack that, because why do you think, and for those of you watching along at home, why do you think sales leaders and business owners might always want to go to the money motivation? Why do they always want to throw out the sales spiff?
Because they are extrinsically motivated themselves.
That's right. Because to become an entrepreneur, for the most part, you're chasing something, right? You're chasing that success. You're chasing the financial reward. Oftentimes, people who are senior sales leaders are the same. They're extrinsically motivated. So let's go back to some of our isms. And what do we always say? You got to lead the people you have, not the ones you want or the ones you were. And that's a classic example of so many business owners and sales leaders leading the people that they were.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But and great on motivation. I think that's a great preface to all this. But momentum, right, is really the topic at hand. And my father, if you ever watch a game with him, sports, he always says, "Oh man, that team really has the mo." So I don't know what upsets me more, that he says mo. It doesn't actually say momentum, but any sports fan can start to feel that the tide's turning. For instance, the Penguins game, up 4-1, and I was texting my cousin, and all of a sudden it was 4-2, 4-3, and he mentioned, oh, I don't know, the momentum. If they score again, they're probably going to lose the game. They didn't. And side note, congrats to Anthony and Andrea. Just had a baby, their first, Emmy. So I wanted to fit that in. But,
Nice.
that momentum, and it's all about, once you get started, and what are the positive things? Activity breeds activity. Closing seems to breed closing. Prospecting breeds more prospecting. We coach a lot of people that might not want to do a drop-in or a cold call. But guess what happens that first time that they connect with someone and they're able to get an appointment? All of a sudden, they do more activity, and it's a lot easier. But, with momentum, it's a double-edged sword, because just like winning and closing in activity, lack of any of those things can kind of put you more and more in the hole.
Feeds on itself.
Yeah. So it's
It's easy to go inside ourselves. And I think
Exactly.
especially for those who are extroverts, when you go inside yourself and you stop the prospecting, you stop the conversations, we wonder why our energy's down.
Mhm.
It's because other people are a source of energy for us. Just as success is a source of energy. So if you're lacking success and you want to just keep waiting, 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 it doesn't come. It doesn't find you. You have to go find it. So what are you doing to motivate yourself daily? And my favorite quote on daily motivation comes from Zig Ziglar. And Zig back in the day said, people say motivation doesn't last. And Zig would say, either does bathing. That's why we recommend you do it daily, right? So what is it that you have to go inside and find inside yourself that motivates you? Matt has a little girl at home. Lucy has a lot of future needs. I have a lot of people that don't eat if I don't work, right? So what is it? And we've talked before about a lot of times our motivation isn't a what, it's a who, or many who's.
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I think it begs the question for those that are in a rut or, maybe don't have momentum at this given time. And again, it's not only just closing, but it could be activity, it could be prospecting, it could be living in discovery. When people start answering questions in discovery or engaged in discovery because we're asking open-ended questions, guess what? We tend to ask a couple more. When they're close-ended or looking at their watch or saying, how long is this going to take? What do? We stop asking questions, or we ask less questions. So
we rush, we hurry, we leave the process, we become frantic.
Yeah. So what do we do to gain momentum, to pick up momentum, to start momentum? Because momentum takes action. And I really believe that, when we analyze it, we have to get back to the fundamentals. And one of the best places to start that momentum and start that success are, what are the fundamentals of our sales process? What are the fundamentals of prospecting? What are the fundamentals of time management? Of making time in our day? What are the fundamentals of questioning? So if you're one of those people out there that don't have momentum, by taking action and revisiting the fundamentals, I think is a great first step.
Yeah, and if we're in a rut and we're looking for those wins and we're looking to build momentum, we can't build momentum in a wave, right? All we can do is build it incrementally. So it goes back to one of the things you've heard us say many times before: do the next right thing. What's the next right thing? Is the next right thing making a phone call? Is the next right thing just preparing a little bit for that Teams meeting or Zoom meeting you're going to have this afternoon? Is the next right thing understanding what questions you want to ask to get to that discovery? What's the next right thing? And when we do enough of the next right things, we build momentum. Right? And when we have a win, when we make a phone call, even if you leave a voicemail, you're starting to process. You make another phone call, might leave another voicemail. Eventually, I don't know if it's 3, 4, 5, 10 calls, you're going to talk to somebody. They're going to be happy to hear from you. You're going to engage. You're going to set up a meeting. What are you going to do? Make another one. It's just doing that next right thing. Last week I was fortunate enough to have 3 great client calls, prospect calls. 3 great prospect calls that were all proposal draft reviews. 2 of them were with the same people, but we built on them, right? We took Monday's call, added meat to it, came back on Friday. We're in a great place. It's all because of that momentum that we build by establishing clear next steps and doing the next right thing.
Which are the fundamentals. And you can't skip steps in the process. That's why doing the next right thing is so important. Bill couldn't say, oh, well, let's get to the finish line. I'm just worried about closing this deal and not done a second PDR or lacked discovery and not asked all those questions. So that's why I think the fundamentals are so critical when thinking about momentum. Another thing this brings to mind, and these are in good times, but I get it every once in a while. Do you think I should slow down? Do you think
No.
we can outsell our capacity, or we're having some operational problems, or it's such a good quarter, it's such a good year? Well, keeping in mind that momentum can be positive or negative, that if we stop that activity, if we stop doing what we're doing, that can definitely send you in the wrong direction. And it might work against yourself of not being able to turn it on like a light switch, but now all of a sudden you can't get that momentum going again.
Yeah, we talk about doing the next right thing. When Matt talks about momentum slowing down, stopping, or working against us, it's usually because we're doing too much of the wrong things. We know what they are. We know what the right things are. We know what the wrong things are. Matthew Kelly, one of my favorite authors, loves to say, You can't get enough of the things you don't need.
Mm.
And we spend so much of our time chasing things we don't need, right? We spend time chasing all these things that we know are not helping us become better, whether it's in our personal life, in our relationships, in our faith life, or in our sales life, right? We can't get enough of the things we don't need. And we start making excuses. So we can have momentum work against us whenever we say, I'm going to prospect by looking at LinkedIn, right? I'm gonna spend time on LinkedIn and understand who's a prospect and understand as much as I can about them and their background. Part of that might be a lie. You might be lying to yourself, right? The other thing is finding busy work, going to that comfort zone. I just had an opportunity to talk to one of our clients today, and he said so much of his time is spent in the minutia versus in the strategic. And he admitted that part of the reason for that is because he's comfortable there. It's become his whoopee, right? So where's your comfort zone that's holding you back from the life you deserve? And what's the next right thing? How do we own that? And what's the next wrong thing to avoid? I think that's the challenge for us as we go forward from today, right? What's the next right thing? And how do I start scheduling it so I can do more of it?
Yeah, I think one other comment of what gets in the way, I think sometimes perfection does, in trying to chase perfection or the ideal. I think that's a comfort blanket as well of, well, I want the perfect script, or I want to have the perfect discovery questions, or I'm new to the organization, so I need to know everything before I go out to my first prospect.
Or I need the perfect prospect list.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many people we work with that are like, oh, I'm building my list. For when? Right? Like if you work on building your list too long, you're not going to be employed to be able to call anybody on that list.
Yeah. So one of our isms, since we're throwing them all out today, celebrate progress, not perfection. And, when it comes to the activity, a lot of people don't like it because they want that magic bullet. But I say, just do it. Just start. Let's let the work drive what we are actually coaching and working on. Let's not live in the sales laboratory of what could happen, what if. We're going to be prepared. And we're going to talk about, some overall core principles, but, let's not get in our own way and assume what's going to happen before we do it. So let's build some momentum. Let's have some activity. Let's prospect. Let's live in discovery. And, good things will happen when we just do the next right thing.
Action, right? Not too many great things happen when you just sit and wait for something to happen. So let's be men and women of action. So that's our challenge to you today. Please think about, what's the next right thing? What's the series of next right things that you need to string together today? What's the thing to avoid, the next wrong thing? And why are we so compelled to go to those? Why are we so compelled to do the things we know aren't important and don't fill us up? So think about what your next right things are, become men and women of action, and good things will happen. It's always good to be with you guys. We look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for everything. Take care and God bless.